specific kind of a thing.
All right,
Inspiration is
live stream.
It comes in a million different ways, but this is very particular, and so inspiration's kind of a gigantic blanket.
It's a little vague. Yeah, I'll go through the text message
Right.
and we will figure it out for the
It may have been in the messages. I don't know where it was, but it was your way of describing it. I looked and went, "Oh, that's smarter, better, cooler than I."
Right. This is me, Spin Doctor.
It worked.
Just
right,
it wasn't that long ago. It's just yesterday. Formative works?
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. That's much better.
I said formative works, shall we call it? And you were like, perfecto.
Yeah, that's it. Because it's not an inspiration. It's
formative is definitely better. I get it.
Yeah. You latch onto it. No, that's
well, we had that conversation and it made sense. I just don't remember that much of the conversation. So sorry.
Well, neither do I. I remember it was a pretty cool conversation, though. It
was a cool conversation. Yeah, I remember that the feeling. I got the feeling.
I'm gonna start hairballing in a minute.
All right.
God.
I shared
we are live.
We are live on YouTube. I shared it on Facebook and shared it on Twitter.
Look at that. Boom.
Good man.
So much easier.
Officially live. I know.
Since the Fache book is broken, we go through the back door.
The broken.
Everything is broken. You know what? We need to do like an intro at some point in time. Like I know we have like our really cool, like, with music and everything intro that Ray did, but should be like newscasters and be like,
we need better intros. Lots of better intros. That's what I've decided.
No, it's not like a better
Here's
intro.
what we need. We need this.
Yes. Whatever this.
Well, that is beyond annoying. It's perfect.
Yes, it is. I love it.
Mumbling and
no. She knows where I'm going with this one. Hold on.
Yep.
If we're gonna do that one.
Do you want me to call you?
Oh God, you could, or I could just hold on. Let me find it.
God. That's awesome.
that, my friend, is my ringtone.
That's her
on
ringtone on my phone. Yeah, that is her ringtone. Every time she calls, that's what comes through. Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is how much I'm cherished.
You got the ringtone. All right, inspiration.
Okay.
Who's starting this off? Somebody give us the go.
I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lacia Croc, live from Georgia.
Live from Georgia. Mostly alive.
Actually,
not dead
we are
from COVID.
succeeding at social distancing today, officially.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. 6 feet away and all of that sort of stuff.
Oh yes, we are absolutely
successful at social distancing.
Today we're successful at social distancing.
We'll see about tomorrow. Yeah.
We will see.
So, as you guys know, I'm the one who usually comes up with the topics on this whole thing, and I'm getting Statler and Waldorf.
Statler and Waldorf 2020.
Vote.
Oh, okay.
Get to the polls. So Rob and I were talking the other day, and I'm like, hey, Rob, how about we do this topic? Because we chat about these things. And it was sort of a, process topic, not terribly flashy or fun or anything like that. And he was like, yeah, okay. But, I had this idea. And he was like very excited, invested in the idea, shall we say. And so
excited, engaged.
Yes, all of
I had to
these
think
things.
about it for a while, though. It didn't just come to me. I had to chew on it.
Yeah. I mean, you'll tell about it better than I can summarize.
Did he
thing.
roll out the tree pose
Sure.
and stand there and do his little namaste?
I could roll out some tree pose if you'd like me to, but
I like to see Rob do a tree pose because we watch him
Right.
timber. You know.
That's it.
Rob doesn't get excited about stuff.
Rob doesn't
very
get
often.
excited in the traditional sense.
He's
He
a
doesn't get excited
dullard.
in
He
the
does not get
traditional
excited.
sense.
Boring people we've ever met.
Rob is very vanilla.
I'm the glue that holds the universe threads from unraveling.
Rob, Jesus Christ just touched out this year's Super Bowl. Okay. What are you doing? I'm calling his ass.
What are you doing? Okay. So it was a later after our conversation.
No brand promos here at the Disappearing
Shush.
Coke Can. Ooh.
Shush, Raymond.
What am I
It was
doing?
after our conversations later that what?
I thought about it, and you made me decide, is this a good idea or not a good idea? And I said, yeah, it's a good idea, but I had something else. And the more I thought about it, because you said, well, what? And kind of caught me off guard, and I thought, what I meant was, and then I had to think about it a little bit more. But when I did, this thing popped in my head. It was a question that was asked of me, and it sounds like it's inspiration stuff, but
Turns
as
out
you
Jesus
correctly
texting
labeled
me.
it, this is more formative stuff.
Yeah.
This is in between creative and useful tool, objective writing process stuff. It lives in this bizarre place in between. And what I tried to distill into a couple of sentences were moments for us as writers that go a long way back, not very recently, but when we first hit on the possibility that we could actually do this, not just a wannabe, but I think I can do this. I'm better at writing than pretty much everybody around me, so maybe I should write. But it was for me, this is a moment or an event or a sensation, a vibe, whatever. When you're reading somebody else's stuff, you're not writing yet, but when you read something that connects so powerfully, not the topic, the way it's handled, the craft of turning it from an idea concept into something that is so visual, and it doesn't have to be this author or that. It can be somebody you never heard of, somebody who's wildly famous. For you as an author, as a writer, what was that moment? I'll tell you very quickly. For me, it was reading a spy novel in middle school by John le Carré, also known as David Cornwell, his real name. And it was a Cold War, down on their heels, underfunded British spy agency. MI5 was in tatters, and they were duking it out with the well-funded KGB. And they made for wonderful stories, the Smiley's People books, and the spy who came in from the cold. And this was called the Looking Glass War. And it was a description of a man being set up to die. He's kind of beyond his time, and they send him out as a kind of a courier to pick up some film and hand over the money, and then he's on his way back to his hotel in a very frigid, wintry southern Finland, or southeastern Finland, and it's miserable and cold, and he's freezing, and he gets run over by somebody who doesn't need him getting that film where it's supposed to go. And
Right.
It was the process of describing that walk where he gets killed, and the descriptive power that le Carré had that it supported my reason for reading everything else he ever wrote. And to me, that was, I keep coming back to it because it was almost like I was blasted up off the ground. I thought, I had read lots of this book, of other books, but for some reason that really got me, and it made me think, if you're going to write a book, this is how you do it. If you're going to describe a scene,
Right.
this is how it's done. If you cheese whiz it, if you kind of caramel over it, you're not doing it right. This guy does it right, and it shifted everything that I thought I knew about it and pushed me to where I started writing. It was a big moment.
We all have those couple
Wait.
of things we've read like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get to yours in a minute, like really, really bad, but I won't forget this. So you say he did it right, air quotes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Subjective as hell.
Exactly. So that's what I kind of want to take like 3 minutes and dig into that. Like, what to you is right about that? Like,
that's a good, and I freely admit it is subjective. Somebody else could read it and go, "Yeah, okay, nice scene." And
it doesn't matter.
It was for me. It
matter.
Was as I felt like I think that was the first time I felt like I was there, really tangibly there. Everything that he described, I was left with a sensation of despair, of loss. It really took me off guard. 12, 13-year-old kid. I'm not really impressed by anything except chicks. That impressed me. That made me think. So when I looked at it again, I think it just kind of imprinted. When I was getting into writing and decided to, your voice comes out, as we know, but I was so conscious of that, and I wanted my scene creation to be at least do that sort of writing justice. To me, it was just like they say in that. And we say it too often. I think it's diminished in its meaning, but it felt like I was there.
So when you say he did it right, you're saying that he is a writer who can create emotionally immersive type scenes.
Yeah, and which is odd for, yeah, it is. And it's weird because of the genre. It's supposed to be cold and distant, and you get invested. Yeah. You get invested in this, and it just kind of, I think it paved the way for the rest of the book and the subsequent books that I read.
So is that something that did that just make you go, oh, this is cool, this is now I want to be a writer, or is that something that actually actively affected what specifically you strive for as a writer?
It's the latter. I didn't in that moment think, oh shoot, I'm going to be a writer now. It was when I started writing and I went right back to that scene in my mind's eye. It had been a long time since I was a teenager and read that book. And it came back, I went to get my copy, tattered, yellowed copy, and opened it up to that page and thought, yeah, I was right. That is how you do it. So it was the latter. It was in there all along, and I went right back there when was faced with, how the hell do I create a scene? Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go see how Cornwell did it. Remember that.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so basically you're going back to the well of your own experience.
Yeah.
Basically, and then trying to drop it. Okay, so Ray, now you go.
Okay. Well, I mean,
what was it?
Well, when I was a little bit of backstory. So when I was a kid, I did a lot of reading. It was my primary escape. And not only would I read, but I would take characters, scenes, or ideas, and I would play them through my head. So I'd finish a book, and then I'd continue the story in my head. And I'd walk around for a week like that, just continuing stories. There was a lot of good books and a lot of good stories, but the thing that caught me, the thing that actually pulled me up short and actually had me sit down in front of a typewriter and write was Piers Anthony and the Incarnation series. And it wasn't that his characters were phenomenally developed or that his scenes were amazing. It was the idea was so different than anything I had experienced in books. I mean, I'd done a lot of King and a lot of Kuntz and a lot of, here's a bad guy, he's kind of supernatural, here's a good guy, they go to war, good guy wins. here was a whole story premise where we take the incarnations of death and fate and war and actually make them political offices. And it came so out of left field for me that it blew me away. And I sat there for a month playing this over in my head, doing different characters from Greek mythology like that. And it really just kind of excited me. So it was that kind of premise. It was just a crazy premise that I could really sink my teeth into and just keep going all over the place in my own head that really had me do it. And from there I went, wow, this is something that could keep me entertained for a year doing this. So that's kind of where I developed some of my chops. And I even write like that to this day. I write based on an idea. I come up with something that I can wrap my head around, and I just start daydreaming and thinking stories around a base idea. But it's how all of my writing forms.
The foundation was that Piers Anthony book.
Exactly. It was that idea, that kernel, and what he did with it that just blew me away. It absolutely did. So that's where I got it from. So yeah, it was definitely the Incarnation series from Piers Anthony.
Did you have that moment?
What's that?
Hold on a second.
I'm asking her. Oh, go ahead.
It's funny because like I know from looking at your body of work, Rob, that there are things in there that I can pull out and be like, oh, look at that. He was successful at, stealing that pebble from that author's hand and then putting it into your own work. And then I'm listening to you, Ray, and I'm always saying it about your stuff. Like, there is no shortage of creativity in there. Like, it is hard. There have been a lot of stories that have been told. It is hard to come up with a concept that's even remotely original. Right. And you've got one. The Earth Reborn thing is like, and even in Shadow War Chronicles, the concept in there is like, I've never heard of anything like that before.
Well, that's what, it's all based on, and that's how we came to become authors. He bases on very much is the detail and the fluid and the artistic, and mine is very much that kernel, finding that idea that just
the cool
idea, novelty. Wouldn't it be? How about things like that? That's how they all start for me, and I build off that one kernel.
So what that comes down to is that you find something that has some sort of how would I put that? It's not like really like a profound effect so much as
I litmus test it. Yeah.
Oh, that, yeah.
Well, no, it's an idea. Like, I'll have an idea and I'll be like, that's kind of cool. And then 2 days later, it's back in my head. And then a day later, it's back in my head. And then I'm lying down to sleep and it's popping into my head and I'm thinking through characters, and it just doesn't go away. It just stays there. And I build upon it and go, wow, there's some real potential. What if it went this way? What if it went this way? What if it did this? By week 3, I'm like, I got to write this. I gotta do this, because this is now, I've got 15 different avenues this thing can go.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. How much of this is deliberate and how much of this happens without your consent, I guess, without your brain's consent, where it just sort of it happens when you're still?
Well, I think it just happens in the way that I'll think of something. Now, there's a lot of ideas that go through my head, obviously. Glacia can attest to this. We have rabbit hole conversations for hours on some things. But the litmus test is, does it go away? Is it something I just go, cool idea, and put it away? Or is it something that just keeps popping up and keeps invading my thoughts? I'll be thinking about something else, and all of a sudden be like, hey, you were playing with this. This is still cool. Let's play with this again. It's
shiny.
The toy you can't put down. But 3 weeks later, it's not shiny. Now you're manic. Now you're like, oh yeah, no, that's cool. I got this, But that's where they come from. And if they last about 2 or 3 weeks, it goes in the idea box or it gets written about.
What did you see in that Piers Anthony moment that was that that germinating seed, that something that set his stuff apart from all others. That breakover moment. Why him?
The book was On a Pale Horse. It was when Death went up to his house and ended up going into the main offices of Death, where all of the mid-level middle management functionaries resided. And he was having conversations about, oh, well, you need to approve this and then have John over here approve this. And then before you can do this. And it turns out anybody who went to limbo had to become a middle management government functionary. That was their eternal job.
They were all Lester in accounting.
All Lester in accounting, literally. And to have him sit there, he got this really cool job. He is now Death. He's got the pale horse and the Sith, and he's badass. And he walks up, and now he has 20 Lesters from accounting side chair quarterbacking him. And that was the coolest thing ever, because he's like, oh my God, just kill me now. Yeah, literally. He's like, oh, you got a soul? Well, we have to approve that in triplicate, and then you've got to take it over here to Bob, and then Bob's got to inspect it, and then he's got to fill out the F375 form. Once he fills out that, you got to then take it over to Janet, and he's like, well, what?
Janet needs the goldenrod copy, not the sky blue copy.
Yeah, did you fill out your TPS reports? That was the kind of thing it was. It was great. It was just brilliant. And
where's my red swing line?
Exactly. It was, and all his stories were like that. Mars and the Fates and Death. Hell, even the Devil was like that. And you're like, God, how bad would this suck?
Yeah.
And for the Devil, it was the greatest thing, because the Devil, and I'll give a little bit away, before he conquered the Devil and became the Devil, he was a priest. And the problem with the Devil is nobody ever believes him. So in order to get anything done, he has to figure out how to lie to somebody to get them to do what he wants them to do. Because he can't just walk up and go, hey, the world's ending and I need you to go get me that stone. Because they're like, oh, you're the devil. You're lying to me. You're full of shit. So he's got to figure out how to lie to them in some intricate way so they bring him what he wants. It's clever, it really is. Because nobody believes him.
I just went down a mental rabbit hole. If I went blank there for a second, that's why.
Yeah, no, it's great, isn't it? It's just like he has to figure out how to do that.
Glacia, do you have one of these moments, something that really was a Kickstarter, even if you weren't aware of it at the time, something that came back later?
No, I don't think so. No, not really, unfortunately. I came to this in a much, much different way than you guys did. And so no, I'm ashamed to admit the fact that I haven't read fiction in 15 years. And I used to read a lot, but yeah, no, nothing really stands out. And it's like there's this part of me that it feels like I'm making like this naughty author confession that I can't.
But your stuff flows well.
No,
it's good.
Your pathway is so profoundly different from ours. A tenfold. You get a lot more.
It's quite convoluted.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever find yourself trying to reach for something? Like when you read your books, do you ever see yourself? Let me give you an example. With the Devil one, it's the greatest literary irony. Here you have a just priest who is incredibly holy and dedicated to the church, who goes to battle the devil, defeats Satan, and then becomes him. Is that a well fuck me moment if I ever saw one? I love that scene right there. I keep wanting at some point to be able to do something that cool.
You know what?
Just put yourself in his shoes. You're like, okay, I'm now Satan. Got it. Fuck. You know what I mean? What do you do when the next priest comes to defeat you? You're like, it was you,
Well, that's funny though, because like your stuff is ironic.
Yeah, and a lot of
times
from that shining out. But yeah, you want to hit those things where people just go, wow, and that was a moment for me,
So wait, all right. So I can identify bits of each of your works that match up with
Right.
each of these examples. Is there anything that has struck you then till now that you've seen that makes you go, something that you can actually point to and be like, oh, I read this thing or this person or whatever that makes you go, fuck, I wish I could do something like that, but I don't think I could.
We always try to mimic things that we like. I mean, give you an example. Most of my characters in a book, they are not, I mean, Shadow War Chronicles especially, not so much. Earth Reborn is probably a little more lofty. Most of my characters are not lofty. They are not like stand on the white horse and have the wonderful epic speech.
Mm-mm.
They, something comes like the alien races come at them and they see 40 ships coming at me and they're like, oh, well, fuck me, this sucks. They have a real, actual, tangible reaction. It's something somebody would. They're not like, fear not, Earth, I shall defend thee, I mean, I don't kind of, because I've seen authors do that. They do the very high-handed kind of approach and speech.
Well, and that's, that's indicative of your voice.
Right, but I tend to make that more realistic approach where people would actually say that, be like, well, fuck, this sucks,
Well, the writing that you look at and that Glacia just talked about, geez, I wish I could write like that, but I know I never will.
It's a Stephen King kind of thing. He's what they call the God killer because he takes characters and he makes them very flawed and human. All his characters are like that.
Well, some others do, but I think go past an individual author. Think, and again, this is as subjective as it can possibly be. Right. I'm afraid of sounding like people I really admire. I don't want someone to say, he must have read a shit ton of Heinlein because this passage sounds very Heinlein. That's like a death knell to me. If somebody says, this is a lot like so-and-so, I cringe. I understand it. It's associative. Somebody says, well, if you like that, you'll like this. It makes me crazy. I don't want anybody to ever say that.
Because
Clive
it feels
Cussler.
like,
yeah, that's what I get. And I really didn't read much of Clive Cussler growing up. He wasn't like an inspiration, but he's a good writer. But I've got so many people who come back and go, you remind me of a young Clive Cussler. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I had to go back and go read a couple of his books to try to see it. I'm like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, I don't want to be compared with anybody, not because I think I'm better than them. It's because to me, that's like you're a cover band.
Oh yeah, you're right.
If you're not writing and composing your own stuff, you ain't a real band in my estimation. And I apply that here. I don't want to be compared.
No cover songs.
Dude,
no
it's
cover
like
songs.
It's like when Ariana Grande first came out and they were like, oh yeah, she sounds just like Mariah Carey. Oh, have you heard this girl? She can hit the notes like Mariah Carey. Yeah. And then it took years and albums and hits in order to be able to remove herself from the shadow of
you don't want to be pigeonholed like that.
Is she removed from the shadow? She doesn't sound, it sounds like somebody has got a roto-rooter and they're gooping with her vocal cords because all of that shit just irritates me. I don't care which one.
You don't like auto-tune.
Right. Yeah, sorry.
Oh man.
Yeah. So Rob, basically you're just afraid of, are you afraid of being accused of mimicry? Or is it just like a personal thing?
No, it's a personal thing. I can defend being an accusation. I can't. If it was accurate is what makes me afraid.
And I'll take that over my fear of sucking. That's like the worst fear ever.
Well, to me, they're one and the same.
That's like the worst fear ever. Yeah, that's like somebody reads your book and goes, "Wow, well, that really sucks." And you're like, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah. Well, to me, it's almost as bad. Your voice is what it is, and you don't have the luxury of dissociating it from someone with whom it may be very close, or enhancing it to the point to where it's unrecognizable and not enjoyable as a book.
But
so yeah, we're always walking in between, and it's an uncomfortable place.
I mean, it's a prime topic. Where does the voice come from? Is it an amalgamation of everything you've read and liked? Is it life experience coupled by how you see people react, coupled by what you've read or witnessed. I mean, there's all kinds of ways people can take that. You know, where does your voice? Is it nature or nurture? You know?
Yeah.
Mm.
A little of both, I guess. An
yeah,
argument
that's
could
a
be
good
made,
point.
right? An argument can
How
be
does
made
somebody,
going both
you know,
ways.
get called talented and somebody doesn't? You know, I mean, how, you know,
It's
what
all
makes that
subject.
talent? What makes that voice?
Subjectivity is what is the killer here. Or
Well,
good,
and that's
bad,
true.
in
We
between.
don't know if we're good. We just know we have a story we want to write, and it sounds good to us, and we put it out, and there's people who want to read it, and then there's more people who want to read it, and we're like, well, shit, okay, cool. You actually want to read my
I want
stuff.
to ask Glacia something. While she was busy raking me over the coals earlier, I'll get back at her for that later.
Yeah, I get you.
Do you find in your editing process, it doesn't have to be Lark, it could be any of the people, it could be any of the scenes, as you're going through them, and I would imagine, because you have to do this in the editing process, it's kind of uncomfortable to ask, and I don't mean it in a snotty way. I'm not trying to set you up.
Okay.
But do you get to, because your writing experience is shorter than Ray's and mine. You came to this far more recently than we did, and for arguably much better reason. But
I don't know.
Do you get to a passage? I don't mean a line. I mean enough, more than a paragraph, less than a chapter. That
a scene
that stops you when you're happy with it, and you come back and see that later and go, that's individual as hell. That's why I feel good about doing what I do, because that would work for anyone. It's not arrogance. It's not, you're not being self-satisfied. You're analyzing. You're good at analyzing. Everybody knows you knows.
Oh,
that,
no, she is very good at
you
analyzing.
can be objective better than the rest of us can. So when you see that,
I've never met anybody who's better at a rabbit hole, let me tell you. It's a reason I call it
you're seeing something that you created, but I think you have a unique ability to sidestep yourself and look at it with almost dispassionately, and still, that was damn good. That was really well written. When I read some of your stuff, when I hit upon a line or a phrase and I go, shit, she's good. It may not be the one that we all, again, it's subjective, and we take this in our own way. Do you have that? Do you see those moments and objectively analyze? Because it's very similar to what I experienced a long time ago. It appears Anthony was for Ray. It's a moment. It doesn't have to be somebody else. It doesn't have to be anything at all. It's something that you say, this is how I'm supposed to do it right here. I'm happy with this because I did it right.
This is how we do it.
Do you have that?
I see what you're saying. The way you phrased it right there at the end almost made it acceptable to address. The satisfaction, not making it seem like it's like, I have, it's like where you look at it and you go, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be. Have I had that experience? Yes, I have. There are a few things that I can think of that, no matter how insecure and removed from the work I become, I can analyze it. I can, sort of read it. I can look at it and I can go, no, that's proper. That's objectively well done. I don't even know if you can really say objectively good, because that's like they're antitheses of each other. But yeah, I can look at things that I've written and see that they are proper. And when I see those, I do go, okay, now make them all like that.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question. This is even more fun. When you and I were chatting the other day, when we were talking on La Telefono, did you think of any of them after we hung up? Did any of those come to your mind?
Any of my own?
Uh-huh.
passages.
Because you remember, you said,
don't
I don't want to know
remember.
what yours is until we have the show, which I didn't tell you until today.
Mhm.
But did any of those come in your mind when you thought about it, or did you just move on?
Any of my own? No, I mean,
Mhm.
I spent probably, I was right over there, probably a good 10 or 15 minutes trying to come up with something that I could use to sympathize with this topic, and I couldn't, and it didn't even occur to me to look at my own work in that way. No, the closest I came was music and movies and TV stories that were told, not necessarily words written, but stories crafted. I mean, if I were gonna, put a finger on something, it would be very, very vague, and in that vagary would be elegantly detailed portrayals of profound stories. One of these days, I'll get something. I'll get something in there like that, something more than a half a page worth.
Cool.
See.
All right. Well, it's kind of it's weird. I had a strange feeling starting this conversation now, different than it was when we talked about it and settled on it. You were going to see if Ray's okay with the topic, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I hope he does, because this is really interesting to me, and I'd like to talk about this. And that changed about 45 minutes ago when I thought, I don't know, we should talk about this, dude. We should think of something else, and I don't know why. I have no idea why.
Wow.
That was a good topic, though. I'm glad we did.
Well, I mean, we can always go back to the boring ass toolbox idea that I had, that we'll probably still get to at some point or another, unless the toolbox idea.
Yeah, I want to do the toolbox thing too, for no other reason than to learn from it. So please don't.
I like
throw the toolbox away.
I like these though. I like the ones where we get
throw the
sort
toolbox
of,
away.
I like when we get to sort of crawl inside of each other's heads and kind of like, worm in one ear and kind of twirl around inside, and then, see light on the other side, that sort of thing. No. It's fun.
Mine's because I'm not. You're kind of wading in there and you just hear.
I've got my hip waders on and I'm like.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we survived it. We survived the topic. I hope we didn't bore the shit out of everybody on YouTube and Facebook.
We probably did. They all deleted YouTube and went to bed.
No, that's what they did. It's better than the toolbox.
All right, so let's do our stop live streaming. So we'll say goodbye to YouTube.
Oh, that was, who did that song?
Good
night, who did that tune? This chick is married to John McEnroe or somebody now.
What the hell are you talking about? Speaking of
Goodbye to You. Remember that song? Goodbye to You. Now you both are.
Goodbye. Yes, I do remember that song.
No
goodbye
idea
to you. Yeah, I remember that.
Anyway,
I still like Sean Up.